and welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor live stream. This week, we're going to be talking about how to avoid several different kinds of mistakes that you might be making with your photo editing. I'm going to be demonstrating using Luminar Neo. However, most of these principles apply regardless of the software that you're using, because they are just that, principles. So take what I say and apply it into your photo editing software of choice. So I just want to give everybody a minute to wander in and check my sync. How's my synchronization today? Am I on sync or off sync? Often when I change views, I end up going off sync anyways. But let's see who is in the house. Neo is in the house. Hey, Neo. Good to see you. Debbie's in the house. Texas. Dennis, welcome. Denmark. Hello. Ooh, Mystic Beach. And Steve says it's raining where he is in Edmonton, but it's sunny outside my window here. So maybe it's coming my way. We had a lot of rain on Friday and Saturday. Yesterday, I attended a powwow and we got totally rained out during the middle of the afternoon. We sucked it up and carried on. That's what we do in Alberta here. So got some great photos. Steve says good sync. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to switch my view. Before I get started, I want to just give you a question to think about while I'm getting into it here. And what kinds of mistakes do you commonly make, or do you think you might be making, that you've come here to confirm or double check on? So tell us in the chat if you think you're making some mistakes, but you're not sure. What are those mistakes? Okay, so I'm going to go over 6 things that I'm going to cover today. So let me find my list here. But I want to hear about yourself, what you think you're making mistakes. Okay, so these are the things we're going to look at specifically today, and time depending, I may, do a little bit more, and we'll, of course, answer questions along the way as well. So I'm going to try and demonstrate what it looks like when you make these mistakes and what you should do instead. So we're going to take a look at overprocessing, and I'm on purpose going to overprocess a couple of images and show you what that looks like, and then give you the alternative, which is scale things back a bit. Okay, so overprocessing, it doesn't look good to most people's eyes. Okay, now if you like that style, if you like the overprocessed look, then by all means go for it. But just understand that you may get some pushback from other photographers saying, that's overdone, especially if you post it in photography groups. And you may get some, the general public, not liking that particular style. Okay, so it's a style, but it's not one that's for everyone. Okay, so consider that. Along the same lines is the overuse of HDR and pushing the HDR again too far, pushing it to the limits and then some, right? We'll see what that looks like. When we get into sky replacement, I'm going to show you what it looks like when you put in a good sky, one that matches well with the original image, and one that does not, and the things that you need to look for that make it not be the right sky. Okay, what indicates I can look at a sky replacement that's been posted in a group. They haven't said that it's a sky replacement, but I know like that instantly the sky has been replaced. So I'll tell you the things that indicate to me a sky replacement, because it's giving me hints that the original sky has been changed. Okay, there's some things that just don't match up. Okay, likewise with the background replacement. Okay, so you can cut out your subject, especially in a portrait style image, and change the background, but there's some better choices for a background than others. Next, we're going to look at the erase tool and the clone tool. Some of this is specific to Luminar Neo, but again, principles apply to any software. And I'll show you a good way to use those tools and what to look for that gives it away that you've done some cloning. Okay. And finally, we'll take a look at adding additional elements into your image, like making a composite or combination of multiple images. And again, what are the signs that give it away to viewers that you've added something, okay? So the whole goal of your editing is to produce a beautiful image, not to scream, hey, I've edited this image. Look at this. Look at my beautiful editing. No, that's not what you want. You want people to say, look at that beautiful image. You don't want them to say, oh, nice sky replacement. Oh, great. You added a cat into that image, right? If they know that you've done that, you haven't done your editing well. Okay, so that is the goal. Your editing should be invisible. Okay, the image is the goal, the image is the star, the editing should be invisible. Right? We need a t-shirt that says that, Rob. Invisible editing. Okay, so I'm gonna just take a quick look here. Rob says neon puke. Yes, that is definitely one of my pet peeves. We're going to take a look at that. Again with the turtles. Thanks, Rob. After converting to black and white, how to ensure black and pure white. Okay, that's a good one, Steve. That was not on my list, but I can put that sort of as a sub element. I didn't do a black and white on this list, but maybe I should add it. So if we have time, I'll add a black and white conversion. Remind me to add that at the end. Steve Danielson says too much saturation, too much blue when adjusting the contrast or dehaze. Dehaze is guilty of that a lot, yes, as well as the Enhance AI tool in Luminar and Sky Enhance. Okay, so I'll show you that one. Overprocessing, too much contrast. Yeah, the neon puke description. Inappropriate and overdone color adjustment. Okay, so you guys are already on the right track and you have a pretty good idea. So let's take a look and see how these things play out when we're actually editing. There we go. Okay, so now I've already pre-done some bad edits, okay? So I'm hoping you could pick these out, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is over processing, and I've done this one first on purpose. Okay, so I've done one and then I'm going to do another one to show you. Okay, so this is one where it is an HDR image. I have merged several images together. Okay, this one is edited. So that's the merged image. It comes out fairly flat. Okay, so I've punched up the contrast and added some blacks and done some saturation, right, or some structure. So you can see in the tools here what I've done. Okay, so develop, color, structure, added a vignette, some color harmony, mythical, some details, and develop again. So this one I probably did a mask. Yeah, so I just brightened up the middle of the image here. Okay, so this one, it's taken it to the grunge level, but it hasn't gone too far overboard. Okay, for some people, this might already be too much. Okay, and if it is, then you would go into all of the things you applied and just scale them back. So if it's too much, right, we're going to do a little bit less structure. Right? If it's too much vignette, we'll do a little bit less. So everything is just scaled back a tiny bit. Right? Mystical's too much. Right? Details too much. So everything just scaled back a little bit. And let's see, what have I done here? Oh, I've done a curve. Okay. Okay, so we've just brought everything down a little bit. Right. Now let's take a look at what really over editing looks like. Okay, so what are the mistakes that are going on here, right? Tell me in the chat. Based on the things that I just mentioned, right, I think I've used many of the same tools here. Yeah, exactly the same tools, right? But I've taken them all to the nth degree, right? So the first one, develop, is fairly similar. I don't think I've done anything here. But when you bring your highlights all the way down and your shadows all the way up, you're sort of creating this extra HDR look, and it tends to go over the top. So I've done that, and then I've added the black back in using the black slider. So I brought the shadows all the way up and then added the black back in. Okay. Some people leave it like this, and you end up with this really flat looking sort of muck. So I'm actually going to bring the blacks up again. And let's just see what else we've done. Okay, so we did color and adjusted some colors here, right? Then structure's been taken almost to the maximum. Okay, so it's going way too far. Now, how can we tell it's going too far? Right, some of the telltale signs, again, you start to see halos around things. Okay, can you see the edge here? There's a black edge on the window frame, and then a white or a light edge inside the sky. Okay, so there shouldn't be these edges like that, right? We still see a little bit there, but it's enhancing everything that is a flaw. It starts to enhance grain as well, right? So if I zoom in even more, you start to see like pixelation and grain, right? It's taking things way too far. Then, of course, I've done a vignette and I haven't softened it enough, right? So when you do a vignette, you want to make it subtle. It shouldn't give you an outline of the vignette. You shouldn't be able to see the edges like this, okay? So there was a vignette on the previous image, but it was much softer, okay? Color harmony, again, I've pushed it to the nth degree. So this one could even go farther, right? If we go crazy with it, okay? So again, this one needs to be used subtly. Keep it lower so you don't go off the chart. And then, of course, it's sharpened and over crunched with all the small, medium, large details. So if you're using Lightroom, structure is going to be like your clarity, and details will be your texture slider. Okay, we just have more options in Luminar for which kinds of details we want to use. When we zoom in, right, you can see the problem. Okay, when you have everything in your image like this hyper sharp, like I mean hyper sharp, okay, this is over sharpened. Okay, when you have everything so sharp that you start to sharpen the noise, okay, you've gone too far. Look at the hat. I mean, there's so much detail, right? Yes, we've sharpened it, but it's over sharp, okay? Because when you look at the whole image, one that is over sharp, you don't know where to look, okay? Your eye is just drawn everywhere, because in an image, 4 things will draw your attention. Sharpness, okay? On this image, it's everywhere. So where does our attention go? Everywhere. Bright color. Well, we've got lots of that. Again, it's everywhere, so we don't know where to look. Areas of high contrast. Again, there's lots of bits of contrast everywhere, right? And the brightest areas. There isn't really anything here that's the brightest area except for that vignette. So our eye goes to that circle, which is not where we want our eye to go. We want our eye to go to these interesting things on the pegs here. So if I look back at the other one, okay, look at the difference, okay? It's not over sharpened, it's not oversaturated, and our eye comes here, okay? These are the brightest things in the picture. And I could probably even take these up a little bit more because I've got this masked. See, you can see where I've masked it. Because I've got this masked, I could even bring it up a little bit more. Okay, so now the brightest thing in the picture is this area, okay? And the bright colors here. Okay, but it's not over the top. So your eye goes to these areas because they're the brightest. Okay. Let's see. Still people adding extra comments. Yeah, Steve, absolutely. Too much graininess, too much noise, which is what I brought out here, right? And that was some kind of fly paper, right? Yeah, it's this was taken in an old school building in a ghost town, and yes, there was a lot of flies, as you can see. A lot of flies, right? I had the opposite problem yesterday with mosquitoes, like over the top mosquitoes in Alberta. It's crazy. Oh, that's John. Okay. It says you're John, you're signed in as IACC program Steve Ricketts, so you might want to just change your name there. You're signed in as Steve. So hey, John. Okay, so that is the first thing about overprocessing. Now let's take a look at this one. Okay, so I've done a lovely process on this girl. Okay, and you can see the things that I've applied here. It's processing now, so I'll let it catch up. And I want to show you a good edit, which is this one. Okay, as soon as I get it to load. There we go. Okay, so there's the before. So I've done beautiful skin editing using the updated Skin AI tool. Okay, again, this is not a tool that is in Lightroom, and this is the number one reason that I use Luminar for my portrait editing. This new slider for body smoothness, face smoothness, skin removal, and watch this. I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so for those of you who are using Lightroom and Photoshop, okay, blemish removal. Watch this. Now, I don't think there is even something close to similar um, in Lightroom or Photoshop, okay? But you can see she's got blemishes, right? Watch what happens. They just go away. And it's gotten like 95% of them. I think maybe one on the edge here of her cheek I might remove. But look what a beautiful job Luminar does. Okay, so all of this is done with the face AI. I'm thinning her face, brightening her eyes, brightening her teeth. All these are done with sliders. There's no masking or painting in of things here. Okay. So that is a good processing. Now I've made a virtual copy of this image because I want to show you what happens when we take this too far. So I'm just going to do some editing on top of this one. Okay. So I'm going to give her some structure, which again, you generally don't want for people, right? Because it starts to make their skin look not so good, right? I can use color harmony, which is one of my favorites, right? I'm pointing out things that are different with Lightroom, right? So Lightroom does not have a color harmony tool. This one is actually brilliant because what it does is it allows you to punch up the contrast on one color while simultaneously darkening the opposite color. So for example, if I'm over blue on the color scale here, it darkens orange, okay? So it's darkening her. Right? This is probably not the best example because we don't have any opposite colors here, right? But if I want to do things like warm up the warm tones, okay, we can make her even warmer. Now she's kind of orange. Okay, so that one is taking it too far. We can also come back up in here and give her more contrast in the develop tool. Right, so again, when we add blacks, remember it adds contrast and it also adds color saturation, right? So as you increase the black level, you get more saturation. So I'm adding more contrast and then I'm sort of taking it away. So another thing that often is done, remember I said bringing up down the highlights and up the shadows, right? So you end up with something that looks, again, similar to neon puke, okay? So now we're seriously over retouching this poor girl, okay? Because this background, the original, is so dark, okay? This is another telltale sign of overprocessing. If your image is underexposed and dark, and I have an example I can show you, when you punch it up this much, you're going to get mega grain, right? I literally answered a question the other day on Reddit about is underexposing better than overexposing? And my answer was no, because when you underexpose and punch up the exposure like this, look at this level of grain that you get. Okay, so it's literally the same as cranking your ISO. So you're not getting any benefit of underexposing using a lower ISO to minimize the grain or the noise. Just use the high ISO and use the denoising because it'll do a better job on the noise if it's created from high ISO than it will this kind of mess, okay? And also you'll notice that her face doesn't have the grain, the background does, okay? So now we have an image that has noise in the background but not in the foreground, right? Because of how we've processed the heck out of it, okay? So again, before and after, and overdone versus not overdone. Okay, so overdone people look orange like this. They look overly crunchy, right? And if I had scaled back her skin smoothing a bit here, so if I scale this all back a little bit, okay, you're going to see what happens when I add this extra stuff, right? When we don't have the skin smoothing because she was nice and smooth, even though it was over processed, right? I can add some blemishes back in too, right? So it enhances the blemishes, right? When you over process and enhances any skin flaw. Okay, so when you have these kinds of flaws, it's increasing the amount of texture in the skin, okay, which we don't want. Okay, so overprocessed people look orange often. Okay, so we don't want to have that. Okay, next one I'm going to do is this one here. Right, and I think I made a virtual copy. Yes, I did. Okay, so this one, again, I've processed to a basic level and that I'm happy with. I did some distortion corrections because, oh no, I didn't on this one. I cropped it because it was crooked, right? And just added some structure and details to bring out a bit more texture in the building, right? If I look at the before, you can see it's kind of hazy, and after, right? Now let's see what happens if we take these same things to a greater degree, okay? So once again, I actually added shadows in this one to create more contrast. You see that? So I'm going to take it the opposite direction, okay, to get rid of all the highlights and shadows. Highlights and shadows going opposite ways like this is almost always your downfall, okay? And then trying to add contrast back in, right, with the blacks and the whites, you're fighting yourself, okay? So you're reducing contrast here and adding it back in here, okay? It kind of becomes a bit of a nightmare, right? That's becoming a mess already, right? Let's just say I want to crank this color a little bit. I want to warm it up a little bit. Now it's too yellow. That's fine, right? And we're going to crank this sharpness as well. Thanks. I want to make it overdone. Show you what it looks like. I always do the chromatic aberration. Now you can do noise reduction here, right? But the issue is when we look at what's happening, we're actually sharpening the pixels, right? Look at the road, right? It's crazy sharp, right? Now, even if we do some noise reduction, and again, this is where you run into creating a mess for yourself. If you do ridiculous levels of sharpening and then to combat that, ridiculous levels of noise reduction, it's not helping the cause, right? So look what happens if I just do a before and after, right? We got weird smoothness and weird texture in the same image, okay? So it almost looks cartoony. Can you see that? Versus if we leave these lower. So I'm going to leave it at this level, okay? So I want to show you what ridiculous looks like. Okay, then we're going to take structure and we're going to take this one even higher. Let's just take it to ridiculous. Okay, now I'm taking a lot of these again way higher than I would ever because I want it to be obvious on the screen. Okay, again, details, right? We're sharpening the heck out of things, and the one you want to be careful of in particular here is small details. Once again, I'm going to just zoom in to this level, okay? Watch what happens when I take small details all the way up, okay? On top of what we did before with sharpening and noise reduction, okay, it's got to load. Come on. There we go. Now we've got this really, really weird sort of crunchiness, okay? Can you see what it's doing? And there's like weird halos here. Can you see there's a white line right next to the door that wasn't there before, right? Watch this line right here, right? There's no white line there. Now there's a white line. Okay, so we're creating this cartoony, almost pencil drawing, right? And then, of course, we can go overboard with our vignette. Right? So again, you want your vignette not to look like this. If you can see a circle, you haven't feathered it enough and it's too strong. So it's probably too strong and not feathered enough. Okay? Even something like this is still too much. Right? So I'm going to keep it that big on purpose or that intense on purpose, just so we can see our full before and after. Okay, so the whole thing again is overly sharp, overly grungy, right? If you want to grunge up some of the building, I would focus on this part, right? And do masking on some of these things to bring attention to the bike, right? You'll see there's lots of bikes in these pictures, right? And you see the huge difference, right? So one that is much more processed more naturally, right? I can add a bit more grunge with this, and maybe even like a mood or something like that to add a lot, right? Versus like this, right? So this is definitely over sharpened, okay? And that's another thing that I see people doing a lot, especially beginners, okay? So over sharpening is a problem, over saturation is a problem, and then over HDRing, okay? So if we look at the doorway here, right? It's black, black, black inside that building. Now we can see inside the door, right? Look at the difference, right? We can see inside the door, but do we really need to? Okay, that's my point. Do we really need to see inside the door? Or is it acceptable to let the inside of the building go dark? Okay, this one could probably use a little bit of sparking up, just a little bit brighter. There we go. So when I'm doing my adjustments for brightness, okay, I use the clipping warning. So I press the J key. Rob, can you please share a link for the Luminar Neo and the Lightroom keyboard shortcuts cheat sheets? So I use the clipping warnings because you can see here, okay? I use the clipping warnings, and I'm okay with that window clipping a little bit. Because I wanted just to brighten that image overall. Okay, so the one that I had done as the good edit, I just needed to brighten up a little bit. Now notice I didn't add another version of develop on top. I went back to my edits and went to the bottom to develop raw. And when you do that, you can't see all the edits that are on top of it, okay? But I wanted to get the brightness correct, and then the rest on top should fall in line, should fall in place, okay? So there's our difference. So good edit, over the top, okay? And this one is really over the top, but are you getting the idea, okay? Hello from Germany, right? Again, I can do the same kind of edit on her, right? So this one, I've done a nice edit, right? Darken this corner so she stands out more. I think I've done a light depth, or yeah, I think I did a light depth on her. Oh, I didn't do it on this one apparently. So I did light depth on her, and then the same thing applies, okay? So enhance AI again tends to go over the top, right? If I apply it really strong. So anytime I use this tool, I use it sparingly and subtly. Okay, so we can go over the top with that one. We can go over the top with too much structure. Again, if I want to apply structure to this rock that she's sitting on, I would mask it, because otherwise we've got, again, too much contrast and sharpness throughout the image, and she becomes lost, right? Look at the difference. Okay, if I just go back 2 steps, okay, that's where we were. Look at how well she stands out here, okay? And I haven't done anything with a bokeh or anything to blur the background, right? But look what happens when I do these on top, okay? Now I could say, oh my goodness, I need to fix that background. So now I'm going to go and do a bokeh on it, on the background. But you've sharpened the heck out of it, right? And added so much structure that it's still super busy in the background and super bright, okay? So let's leave that bokeh. Get a little bit closer to her, right? And if I go and remove structure, just reset it, and enhance, reset it, and then put the bokeh back on, right? Look at how much more natural that looks, right? This corner's a little bit dark, and she might be just a little bit dark overall. So in this case, I can go do develop on top of the edits, okay? Her teeth are clipping. There we go. So she was just a tiny bit dark. There we go. Right? So see the difference, right? When we blur it without adding all that mess in the background and all the over sharpening, right? It's a much nicer, softer blur, right? Because if you had used a lens that has a shallow depth of field like that, you wouldn't have that crunchiness in the background. So again, it's another telltale sign, a giveaway that you've edited, right? I got one more example in this category, and then we're going to move on to skies. Okay. Remember, I mentioned if you really push the exposure on an underexposed image. So this one I've got, I did an HDR with this one. So the images are this one. So the bracketed images, this one, and this one. Right. Then I processed it to HDR, and I came up with that. Okay. And of course, overdone. Okay, so overdone here, we've got some weird halos in the sky. The sky would not be darker right above the sun. That's weird. This canyon would be deep shadow. Again, that's weird. There's a halo. Okay, so you can really see the halo here. Okay, so what I'm talking about is there's something dark, which is this rock. Then there's a light halo around it, and then something dark again. Okay, so that's that edge contrast that's been over enhanced. Halo, bad. Okay. When I go back to the one before, you see there's no halo there. Okay. Much softer edit. Okay. But I want to show you this one in terms of look how underexposed it is, but that's done on purpose. Okay. Because of the HDR. Okay, there is a little bit of dark area above the sky, but I want to show you what happens when we push this exposure up. Okay. So I'm going to crank the shadows so we can get some exposure up there. Probably getting some clipping. Yeah. Okay. So this is what happens. Look, when we do the shadows highlights thing. Okay. When I go too far, I'm going to crank these both all the way. Okay. So now we've got detail, right? Everywhere. But let's just have a look in here. Can you see how much grain there is there? Right? It's crazy amount of grain. Look at that. Okay. And this is shot at a low ISO. Okay. Versus when we look at the HDR version, and this is a prime example of why to do HDR. When we look at the HDR version and zoom into the same area, especially here, look, no grain, no noise. Okay. Because I captured the detail with the brightest image, I captured the detail in the shadows. Okay. So another mistake would be not doing HDR when you should. So there's two sides of that coin. Doing HDR unnecessarily. Rob, did you share the links? Are you down there? We need to have the keyboard shortcuts, please, for Lightroom and Luminar. And also the article on when to do HDR, please, Rob. So when you do HDR, when you shouldn't, is a mistake, okay? Meaning you have an image that's not overly contrasty, like this scene is super contrasty, okay? So this is a good one to do HDR on, like I've done here, okay? Then not doing HDR when you should, okay? So look at what happens when I push up this exposure, okay? I get super mega grain, right? And now we've kind of lost detail in the rock as well. When you underexpose and then try to put this, okay? When you push it up like this, look at how much detail I've lost in the rock versus here, okay? So underexposed, you're going to get loss of detail, lack of detail, and when you push it up, you're going to get extra noise. Okay, so part of the mistakes come in camera before you ever get to your computer. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, so I've showed quite a few different examples of what over editing looks like. Here's another one where I did HDR. Okay, again, bracketed images. Let me just show you the exposures on these. Okay, so the exposures are up here. Okay, so when we look at the first one, this one was exposed at ISO 200, f6.4 at 800th of a second. Okay, the second one was at a 400th of a second. And then this third one, oh, looks like I changed my aperture. 6.4? No, that's right. Oh, interesting. My ISO changed. Aha. So I screwed that up because my ISO went from 200 to 400 to 1600. So that's another mistake. So I screwed that up. Not setting my ISO. I had it on auto ISO when I did my brackets, apparently. And so instead of bracketing the shutter speed, it bracketed my ISO. Okay, so that's also not not ideal. Okay, but then I processed the images again. Okay, so this one I brought in as HDR, and it's okay, right? It's just picking up enough detail, right? Compared to that one to a single image, look how dark the building is. Okay, so the HDR, oop, that's the overprocessed one. The HDR compared from that one to that one brought more detail out in the sky and in the building without going too far. Okay. And of course, there's too far again. So this one is your neon puke example. Okay, so it's absolutely over sharpened, over color saturated, over contrasty, over. So even though we have detail in the building, this is the shadows and these are the highlights. Somehow they're ending up the same brightness, which again is weird and wrong. And we have major halo around the tree. Can you see how the sky is blue and then it's sort of gray in amongst the leaves? Okay, so that's a major halo as well. Okay, beyond the whole crunchiness. But the thing is, if we had started with just a single image of a middle exposure, okay, so not a, or even this one, I don't know if I can recover this one. This one is overexposed to get the brightest areas. I might be able to recover this one, right? If you overexpose a little bit or push your exposure to the right, so this is called exposing to the right, right? I might be able to get enough detail in the sky back. Okay, and then you start to get banding as well. Okay, so there's another example I can show you. Right, so trying to process from one image, I'm not going to get as good a result. So even though there's lots of detail in a raw file, I got a way better result from merging those three because look what's happening in the sky. Okay, so this is what's called banding. Even though it's up here, it's kind of hard to see. Can you see there's this little squiggly line here? Okay. I'll just increase the contrast. Okay, can you see it now? The line goes right here. Okay, so there's a tonal range in the sky that when I push the shadows and the highlights, right, I'm also getting some halos and weird things around the trees, right? Because there's not a lot of detail there. But you see this line, okay? That means that you've pushed the image too far and there's just no details there, right? I can continue to push it. Yeah, now you can really see that line. See that? There just isn't enough detail in that sky. Okay. If I try the medium image, okay, so this one is sort of the middle exposure. Now I'm cranking the shadows, bringing the highlights down. That's better, okay? Better. Now we have a way better choice. Okay, so you have to get your exposure right if you want to be able to work with something like this that is super high contrasty, or this is a situation again where HDR and bracketing just gives you that much more detail. Okay, so I've got more detail in the shadows and the highlights without it going overboard. Okay, let's see. Sure, even the pros screw up, but mostly the cheat sheets though, Rob. I wanted the cheat sheets. Paul says, over editing is tricky. I only see it after already posting the photo. Aha. So once you post it online, so send it to your phone then, send it to your phone and have a look on there outside of your photo editing software. And if you look at it and you go, ugh, you might want to rethink, right? You might want to rethink. You introduced a spelling error on my slide. I don't seem to remember that. And you had to redo the videos on every lesson. Huh. Oh, I must have pointed it out. See you, Neo. Take care. Laughing out loud, crying. Yeah, I love it. Laughing out loud, crying. Literally crying. Okay, let's take a look at the next mistake, though. We're going to move down. Okay, so the next one is about sky replacements. Now, I'm going to do something here because I want to show you just the ones with sky. And I'm going to make these larger. Okay, so there's 5 images on the screen now. And let's just call them across the top 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5 on the bottom. I want you to put in the chat, which of these do you think has had the sky replaced? Okay, there might be more than one, or there might be none, or they might all be. Okay, so how many out of these 5 do you think have had a sky replacement, and can you pick out which one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm going to leave this on the screen for a bit, okay, and talk about sky replacement, because when we do sky replacement, and this might clue you in as to which of these have been replaced, and if you have my Luminar course or my Lightroom course, you already know because you've seen the original images, okay? The Lightroom keyboard shortcut too, please, Rob. Okay, so when you're doing a sky replacement, there's a few key things that you need to get right in order for the sky to blend in with the original image. It has to be believable, okay? Number 1 is the direction of light, okay? So if the sun is visible in your original image, okay, if it's literally in the sky, you have to put a sky replacement that has a sun in the same place, because the shadows otherwise aren't going to match, okay? So sun, light direction as well. If your image does not have the sun, oh, excuse me. If the image does not have the sun, but there are shadows telling you where the sun is, okay, the sky has to match as well, okay? How about the color? If you put a sky into a pink sky into a scene that's blue or daylight, that's not going to work, okay? If you put a bright blue sky into a scene that was shot with golden light, that's also not going to work. You're going to have a harder time blending the two, okay? We got a couple of answers. How many skies have been replaced? Paul says 1 and 2. Dawn says 2 is a bad sky replacement, right? What else? What else is a symbol or a signal of a bad sky replacement? So tell me, Dawn, okay, what is telling you that number 2 is a bad sky replacement, right? What is telling you that it's bad, right? Is it that you could see the night sky? So let me show you them closer up, okay? So let's take a look at number 1, okay? Paul thinks this was a sky replacement, and I'm not going to tell you which ones are until we get to, I'll show you the edits, okay? That's number 1, okay? Is it believable? Seemingly, some people think it is, right? Dawn says this one is a bad sky replacement, but I'm curious as to what indicates. Okay, so he says halo around the building. A little bit of a halo, yeah. But now that it's full screen, does it look more believable? You're right. It is a sky replacement, and I probably could mask it better. Okay. Great eye for picking that up, because that's a halo there is very subtle on this one. Okay. About this one. Okay. I'm just going to leave this one with you for a minute. Is this a good sky replacement? Has it been replaced? First of all, has the sky been replaced here? And is it a good sky replacement? Still processing the image. It'll sharpen up for us in the middle. There we go. Right? What about this one, you guys? Dawn, Paul, who else is here? We've got 27 people here and only 8 thumbs up likes on this video. So if you could give this video a thumbs up and we get to 29 people, okay, that would be great. 29 thumbs up. So what is wrong potentially with this one? Or is it perfect? Okay. Do you see anything? I noticed nobody said this one. Right? And nobody said this one. Okay. Number 3. Not sure about the shadows. Now that you've seen it larger, are you sure, Paul? Okay. I'm going to give you the answers now. Okay. So let's go and look at this. Okay. This one indeed did have a sky replacement. Okay. But it's been done in a way that is believable. Why is it not? Okay, so there's the original. It was just kind of dull. I just wanted to add some clouds, right? I also did some erasing to remove the poles and a few other things. but the clouds are reflected in the water, which makes it believable, okay? The light direction, the sun here, if you look at the shadow, the sun is coming from literally where these shadows point. So the sun is coming from over here, right? Which means that it wouldn't be in the sky. If I change this sky to have some sort of weird sky replacement, like let's try that same one. This is another one that is automatically a bad sky replacement because this sky is used so much, right? This is a bad sky replacement, right? The sun is literally making a shadow here. So how could it be over here? Okay, we can move the sky back and forth, right? You can rotate and move your sky to make it match better, but I'm never going to get the sun over here. So that is just a bad choice on this one, okay? Where's the one? I think it's this one. There's one sky that everybody uses. It's this one, okay? So it's under dramatic sky, comes with Luminar, and the mistake that people use is using this same sky replacement so many times, right? So another thing is that if you do a lot of sky replacements, change it up. Make sure you have lots of skies. Purchase some if you need to, and take some of your own, right? Create your own skies. We do have a sky pack available if you need skies. So Rob, could you please put a link to that? And yeah, so the color in here is not picking up in the reflection. So I could work on the relighting, right? In here, and I could work on the reflection. Okay, so then it brightens it. But again, this just doesn't work. Number one, it's too bright. Okay, so I can lower the brightness of the sky. Let's change that. Okay, so it just doesn't work because the eye, and photographers may pick this up. Other people won't necessarily know what's wrong with it, but it just won't feel right, right? There's a great sunset in behind a scene that was taken at midday or like later in the day. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the other sky that I had used. I'm just undoing until I get back to my original sky. Flipping it. There we go. Okay, so if you're going to pick a sky, you want to pick one that is fitting. Okay, so what did I do here? I think I picked one, something in here, right? Like these crystal blue or these cotton skies. You could also pick something like that. Doesn't look realistic either, right? So you really have to go through. These are some from my sky pack. You really have to go through, right? One that has see, that's not bad, right? That's kind of believable, right? But that's not, right? Because the stormy sky, I mean, maybe, I don't know, it just feels wrong, right? I'm gonna get that right down there. It just doesn't look right, right? So this go by feeling, but also it has to make sense with, like I said, direction of light. So here's another one that has the sun in the picture, okay? So look at that, right? The sun rays are here, right? Versus, let's brighten it up a little bit. That's crazy, right? Your sun rays are here, but the light is here. No, no bueno. No bueno. Let's stick with our clouds. So even that's not bad. And look at the reflection, okay? You can play with flipping it if the direction is wrong, okay? You can also move the clouds, move your sky to kind of get it, where you want it. Like, that's not bad. I just wanted it to break up the sky a little bit, right? Because plain blue clouds, plain blue sky is just kind of boring, right? If we look at the next one, okay, that Dawn is called out, right? When we look at this, we can take a look and see if I can do the masking any better. Once it loads, oh, come on. I got this frog in my throat. So when I've done the sky replacement here, this is from my sky pack as well. Rob sky pack. I'm waiting for it to load. Come on, give me a before and after on this one. I've brightened the sky a little bit because it was fairly dark. Okay, so I've brightened the sky, and I've also used this atmosphere. Okay, because if I leave it dark, then there's more of a halo. So I'm trying to blend it in a bit more. Okay, so that helps. There we go. See, that's gotten rid of a lot of the halo there. Okay, and I'm gonna just make it a little bit bluer. Is that better, Dawn? That's a little bit more believable for me. Now, the only thing that gives it away here is now I can see the moon in behind, okay? Because that was the moon in the original sky, right? So that's the original sky. I also added the lights using Magic Light in Luminar Neo. So you're right. Getting rid of that scene lighting also helps getting rid of masking, okay? See how that helps? Yeah, that's a huge helper. There we go. That gets rid of the halo as well. Okay. Hey, Stephanie. Rob, are you sleeping? I want the Sky Pack link when you're back on your keyboard or what's going on there. Okay, this is the one that I really wanted to point out because I mentioned the lighting direction. And once again, it's all wrong, okay? Besides the fact that it's using that same overused sky that everybody uses and posts in the Luminar groups. So, I'm just waiting for this one to load here. How many of us are here now? Oh, we got 14 thumbs up. Keep thumbsing up. I'm just waiting for it to load. I've got the Mac spinny wheel. Let me see if I can close some apps. No, I've got literally nothing else open. Okay, here we go. So this is that one that everybody uses. It's under dramatic sunset. Okay, so it's under dramatic sunset. Where are we? Yeah, dramatic skies. Okay. No, that's not it either. It's called dramatics. It's called dramatic number 1, but that's not it. Where is it? There we go. There it is. It's under dramatic sunset number 1. Okay, the challenge again with that is, look where the sun is. It's clearly over here, okay? Now, it's not bad because the light is coming from this direction, okay? But what if I flipped it? Okay. Now, does it work? No. Okay, so now the light is coming from here in the sky, but it should be over here. Okay, so the sky itself is not bad, but this is clearly made from a sun that should be visible in the sky. Okay, if we look at the original, this is daylight. It's middle of the day. Okay, so everything is blue, and now we've gone fully golden hour. Okay, so can we pick a better sunset? Maybe. Let's see if there's one in here. There's actually one that I've used on this image. Again, right? The sun is in the wrong place, right? Look. If I put it there, and we've got major sun relighting here, right? It's still in the wrong place. The sun needs to be, follow the shadows. The sun needs to be over here, right? So the one that I have used on this one in the past is this sky, right? And flip it so that the lightest part of the sky is coming down this way, okay? So that is somewhat believable, right? I use the atmospheric haze a lot because it softens the sky, right? See how the sky has got a lot of contrast? So I'll soften it with the haze. And let's just see if we move it. So again, not bad. And it's picking up the color, right? But I wouldn't put a sunset typically on a sky that's shot, or an image that's shot in the middle of the day. Because it just doesn't make sense. Okay, so let's just see if we use one of these. Okay, here's the actual sun. Oh, it's not in there to move it way down. Where's our sun? There it is. Okay, so there's the sun, right? Now look, okay? There's our sun following this. So then I could go and double down on it and do something like add a sun rays tool and have the sun rays coming through over there to make it match, right? But generally you don't want the sun to show in your images. Let's try one of these. So just giving it, you know, some texture. A little too fluffy. It's really got to make sense, okay? Again, this is why I use the haze, because I find a lot of skies that you buy tend to be overdone a little bit. They tend to be over contrasty, okay? Not sure if I've got one other one in my pack that would work on this one. No, these ones don't work. So you want something in here with, you know, blue sky, right? There we go. Oh, a nice chemtrail right through the middle of that one. Okay, so just giving it a little bit of interest in the sky. Okay, so adding those clouds doesn't take away from the image, and it matches. Okay. These two did not have a sky replacement. Okay, so all I did on this image was twilight enhancer. Okay, this is a stock image. Oh, you did the sky pack. Okay. This one is a stock image, and all I did was enhance with what was there and added some twilight color using the beautiful twilight enhancer tool. I love this tool, especially for stuff like this, right? Similar to this one, right? Another stock image, and all I did was enhance what's there. Okay, so if you have detail and interest in your sky, don't replace it, right? Work with it. Right, so this one obviously has a good sky, and I just punched up the contrast a little bit. This is one where color harmony did a nice job on the sky, but you'll notice I applied it twice. Okay, so the first time I applied it on the foreground, right? See what it's doing on the land. And then the second time I applied it on the sky. Okay. So let me clear my filters and come back to all the pictures. There we go. The next thing I want to talk about, any questions about sky replacements, okay? Because the principles, like I said, are the same whether you do your sky replacement with Luminar, excuse me, with Luminar, On1, Photoshop, or any program that can do a sky replacement. Lightroom cannot do a sky replacement, okay? On these next ones, we want to talk about background replacement. So this is something, again, that is usually done on a portrait. You might do it on a different kind of subject, but I've already done background placements and cut them out already on 3 of these images just to show you and save time on the whole cutting out process. If you want to know how to do that, if you want to know how to do the background cutout, there's another video on that maybe Rob will find for you when he gets back to his desk. I think he's feeding cats. Okay, so this is the original image, right? And I cut them out. Okay, so again, I'm just turning off my layers. So I've tried different images in the background. So notice the original, right, has a very light background. They're in a room that like a sunroom, okay? And I've kind of got them backlit. And then when I do the cutout, right, there's lots of highlights around them, okay? When I add a dark background, look what happens, okay? The highlights show up and there's still a little bit of white around them. So I'd have to go back in to my layer and do a better job masking, okay? So this one doesn't blend so well, okay? Another one with a dark background. Again, same issues. Okay. Then I tried to put them in the forest. I thought, well, maybe that will hide some of the issues. So what is the problem here? Okay, now I've put a background in that doesn't make any sense. Their original background is really out of focus. So if I wanted to have a background like this, it's also a different color. Okay, so the log or the trees are a different color than them. So I need to warm them up, and we can do that on different layers. Okay, I'll come back to this one in a second. I just want to show you the other two. There's one more that I tried. Also doesn't make sense because the scale is wrong. So the scale of this doorway was taken with a really long zoom lens, and the scale of the people taken with a wider lens doesn't match. Okay, so the scale is off, and I still have the white halo. When I put this stock image behind them, look what happens. The white halo disappears because the background itself is light colored. Okay, so by choosing the right background, I've made my life a lot easier, right? So if I don't like this background that's there, I can replace it with something light and have less masking work to do, okay? Well, let's try the trees. Let's see what happens if we try and make these trees match. So we can edit the image of the trees, and it's actually a horizontal image. So I can move it around, right, to have more of the yellow color, right? Oops. See, now it's, I gotta get it perfect. There we go. Nope, still didn't get it. Now I've deselected my layer. There we go. Okay. I'm just gonna make it. Somehow I'm getting on a different layer. I'm just gonna make it fill. There we go. Okay. So I'm just gonna leave it like that, with a little bit of space over there. Ugh. I'm just gonna leave it there. Okay. I'm not gonna touch it. Okay. So what I need to do is I need to blur this background layer because it needs to match more with the image. So the original image had a blurred background. Okay, so that's too blurry, right? We get the white halo back. But if I just add a little bit of blur, right, it kind of becomes believable. Okay, it's a little better, but we still have the white halo and they're not the same color. So I could come back to the image of them. You got to check your layers, okay? And I'm going to go and add them some warmth. So I'm going to come into my white balance here, give them a bit more yellow. See how that's starting to blend better? They look more golden. See that? Okay. And I'd still have to come in and do some work on this outline, this white outline, right? So I did the background removal, right? I could do it again and mask it better, or I could come in here and start, erasing with the brush. Okay, so I'd have to kind of make sure I get rid of all this white. See, that's better. There we go. And now I'm losing her hair. Okay, so you have to do some really finite, zoomed in, careful masking, right? But notice how when I did the white background, I don't have to be as careful, right? When I put the white background back on, it just disappears. Okay, so make your life easier. And the same applies with this one that I did of myself. I did a background removal. Now, this one was actually taken on a white background in the studio. Okay, so when I replaced the background and put something in behind, that same white background with the arches worked really well here also. If I try something with a darker background, I'm just going to turn the white layer off. Okay, waiting for it to load. Come on. There we go. Right. So of course I've retouched myself as well. If I turn the white layer off or hide it, right, there's a darker background. And once again, you have the same issues. I've got little bits of white showing around me. My hair's kind of missing there. There's some glow or some weird stuff up there. But with the white background, it just blends in, right? Including down here. So when you're doing a background replacement, make your life easier. Don't go and pick something that isn't going to match well. Okay. So I did the same thing here using those same backgrounds. Okay. So now we have a couple on a darker background. What happens if I try and use, oops, still processing. I gotta show the one background here. There we go. Okay, so I cut them out, but it's not perfect. Okay, you'll see that when I turn on this layer. So now the opposite problem exists. Okay, there's parts around them that are dark, especially around her arm and stuff here, that don't blend well with this light background. Okay, so I could try a different background. Better, but it just doesn't kind of make sense or work. Again, this one doesn't make sense for a couple of different reasons, okay? Number one, the light. There's light coming from this side on him, and there's nowhere for it to come from. So I could flip this layer, okay? So if I'm on this layer here, I could literally flip it and have the light come from there, okay? So that's kind of better, right? I also cropped it a little bit so that I got rid of that white edge. But maybe for him, we want the white edge. I'll just do it to fit. There we go. Okay, so that's better because then the light sort of matches. But notice that, you know, they should be sharp. But then what happens in the background is the stuff that's right next to them is blurry. And then it gets sharp back in behind them. Okay, so you have to also look at focus in your image and focus in your background. Okay, so if they're sharp and the background's blurry in the original, yeah, they're sharp now. Now you can see that the stuff next to them in the background here is blurry and then it's sharp further behind them. So that doesn't make sense because we can't have sharp, blur, sharp. Okay, so doesn't make sense. We can, however, have this one, okay? And I think I flipped that one as well to make it match the color direction. Same thing applies now, okay? We need to blur this layer, okay, to make it make sense. And I would need to add some warmth. And we can also add a vignette to this layer. So anytime you add a background, look, I can add a vignette, okay, to the background to match them a little better. And of course, they need to be warmed up. Okay, so I come back to develop and just give them a little bit of warmth. Probably golden hour actually might be a nice choice here, which is under landscape. Landscape. Remember, this is only applying to them. Okay. Is that working? I'm not sure I've given them enough yellow. I'm going to come all the way back to develop, run to color here and give them a bit more color here. There we go. Now they're matching. See that? Okay, now the gold matches. Okay, so their color, golden, background, golden. Okay, that matches better. Right, and the background is out of focus. Right, similar to the original. Okay, so when you replace your background, if you have a dark background in the original, try and choose a dark background for the replacement. Conversely, same with white. Original light background, choose a light background for the replacement. When you're doing color choices, make sure that both layers have the same color tone, right? You can also bring them together by merging your layers, okay? Let's just delete these ones that don't work. So I'm going to delete this layer and I'm going to delete that layer. And let's just say I want to do this. Okay, so now I can do merge layers. I can just select these two, okay, and merge these layers. It's going to give me a new layer on top with these two images combined together. So it's going to cook them together. And then I can edit them as one. So I can apply a LUT that helps blend them together as well. Okay, you can do that with your sky replacements too. Subjects are a little too bright, Steve says. Possibly. I could tone them down a little bit as well. But I think when I added the gold, that made them blend a little better. Okay, did that work better? Okay, now that I have this merge layer, okay, I'm actually just gonna, I'll leave it there. Now I have the merge layer, I can go and apply a mood tool or a LUT. Okay. And I'm just going to pick one that I know that works well on lots of things, and that is the sepia one. Okay, I like this sepia one. It just kind of gives a little bit of faded out antique color, but see how it's applying to them and the background equally, right? And it also helps to merge them and blend them together better, okay? Something like that, okay? So it just gives a little bit more matchability, okay? So merging your layers and adding a LUT helps them merge color-wise. Okay? Next one up is erasing. Any questions about that? We've done overprocessing. We've talked about over HDR mistakes, sky replacement mistakes, background replacement mistakes. Now we're going to try and erase something that is fairly complex, okay? I've already done quite a bit of work on this one, and I have done an erasing, okay? So I'm actually going to duplicate this image as a virtual copy and redo it for you, okay? So I want to erase this garbage, okay? Look at the before and after. I haven't erased it in this one. And this wire up here, okay? I didn't like the wire, and you can see that it's actually, I've done a pretty good job. Look at that, okay? If you just saw that, you wouldn't know that wire was there, right? I've used the tools here. I've used develop, light depth to add a bunch of light to him because he was very dark, right? And darken this upper corner, okay? So from here, I'm going to create a virtual copy, okay? And that's just Command apostrophe on the keyboard shortcuts. And then I'm going to edit it from here. Hopefully, if it takes me to the edit module. Could I show color harmony again? Yes. Let me do it on this one. Oh, I seem to have gotten my... I just got to get out of there. There we go. I'm stuck in edits here. Sometimes when I make a virtual copy, it does a weird thing. I'm stuck. Shoot. Okay, let me just delete this virtual copy. There. Okay, see if that helps. I might have to exit Luminar. I'm not sure why it's stuck, but I want to get into this virtual copy here. There we go. Fixed it. Okay, so you want to see color harmony again. Okay, so color harmony gives you contrast in opposite colors. So I'm going to apply this one. I usually go about 20, 25, and then sometimes dial it down even lower than that. And then there's this hue scale down below here. Okay, see this here? So where you fall on the color scale, okay, is where your contrast is going to be applied. Okay, so because it starts default on orange, you're going to brighten and add contrast to like red orange. Okay, that's on the far left of the color spectrum here. Okay, so see what that's doing. Hopefully it's taking a while to catch up. Come on, catch up. Well, it's definitely doing something. There we go. Okay. Okay, so see what it's doing? It's brightening orange and red and yellow, the trees and the grass. So I'll just leave it high so you can really see what it's doing. As I move it over yellow, we get less of the red chairs and more of the yellow grasses. Then we're going to get more green. Okay, and the opposite color starts to get darkened. When I move over green, okay, magenta gets darkened. When I move over blue, the sky or anything that's blue is brightened and added contrast, and the opposite color, yellow, so you gotta know your color wheel, the opposite color gets darkened. Okay, then we go over red. Okay, opposite color is cyan, so that's going to darken the sky. And then back to our yellow orange. Okay, so notice the sky is being darkened here. Okay, and obviously this is way too far. Okay, so this section here under color harmony, the color contrast, are my favorite sliders. But you can also do things like make the warmer colors warmer or neutralize them. Okay, so if you've got too much yellow in your image, right, if your yellows are out of control, this slider right here under color harmony is brilliant. It neutralizes the yellow. See that? Okay. All right, let me get back to this image. Right, I'm just going to undo the erase and then I'll show you what I've done. Okay, so in here, I've done erasing and some cloning to get rid of that thing. Okay, the cord. So if I look at before using the erase tool, I did most of the, let me just zoom in. I did most of the erase of this black cord using the erase tool, right? You can see there's the cord and there's the after. And there's a couple of little problems here and there, and there's some of the cord left, right? So then I completed the job with the cloning tool, right? It's virtually perfect, okay? So I'm going to undo these two and show you the mistakes that you want to avoid, okay? So there's a couple of things that people do with the erase tool, and this applies, again, to any software, whatever you're using to do erasing, okay? The first mistake is erasing when your image is full screen like this. So when you have it fit to screen, okay, and let's say I want to try and erase this whole cord, so I just made a smaller brush, okay? So I'm going to start up there. I'm going to paint the whole cord, right? And say erase. How good do you think it's going to be? Think it's a one-click thing? And I'll do the trash over here as well when we have luck. Okay. And I'm going to do the trash over here. Might even get a bigger brush. Okay. And let's see what that does. Okay. So from a distance, what does it look like? Not so bad, but up close, we kind of have a disaster, right? It's okay in here in the bars, and then up to here, it starts to go wrong, right? Same with the garbage down here. Okay, at first glance, it looks okay. And I can actually work with this here. I can actually work with this, right? But there's a key thing here that's a giveaway that you've done cloning, and that is repeat patterns, okay? Look at this. There's green here, and then the same green grass here and here, the weeds sticking through. So it's been repeated here, okay? That is the biggest mistake in cloning. When you erase something, you'll see it repeated like this if you haven't done it properly, okay? So this is a bad version of cloning, okay? But it's done an okay job over here, and I can work with this and get rid of this part, okay? So I could just do a restore here, okay? Let's just restore. So I'm painting with the restore brush. That really didn't do much. I'm going to undo. Right, I'm going to leave that. I am going to restore this whole section up here. Right, where's our cord? Right, so this part is actually not bad, but I'm going to just do a restore. Oh, I know what I did. I hit erase instead of restore. I can fix that. Okay, so I'm just going to do the whole thing. So paint over it and then click restore. And I'll fix the trash down here. I'm using the keyboard shortcuts to get the brush smaller. Okay, so we got the trash back, but I'm getting rid of the repeat patterns. Okay. So a little bit of the trash came back. I can work with that. Okay, I can work with that. So now I've used the erase tool, zoomed out. Now I want to use it in a better way. Okay, so now that I'm zoomed in, Okay, we're going to come back up to, let's just see if I can do this part. So number one, step number one, zoom in to at least 100%. You'll notice that I'm at 200%, okay, before you attempt using the erase tool, okay? Also, do it in smaller sections. Do little by little. See how that worked? I'm going to see if I can get rid of that square. Even though there's a step there in real life, I just want to make it believable. So I just want to make it straight across there and straight across there. So this one actually is not too bad, right? It's filled in some places here that, you know, it looks like gravel or dirt, right? And I'm going to leave this and do the rest with cloning, right? Likewise, I'm going to fix this and this with cloning because it still doesn't look perfect, right? But it's better. Then I'm going to come up here and do the same, right? Again, I'm zoomed into 200%, okay? I'm going to do little by little. I'm just going to do that part first, okay? So literally, I'm doing one part of the black cord at a time in between the bars, okay? Just to get rid of it. So one at a time. Again, little by little, up to the corner, right? Next, I'm just going to do the corner. Right, next, up to the corner again. So I don't want to overlap these edges. So as soon as you go over an edge, that's where you have potential problems. Because if I try and do this, you'll see what happens. Crooked. So undo. And I'm just going to go again up to the edge. Still not getting what I want. So I'm going to leave this section here. Okay. I might be able to go with a smaller brush and just get a little bit more of it. No. So I'm going to leave it. Right. And then I'm going to go to the next section here. Okay. So I'm just on the edge of the green door. It's still not working. Let's try all the way up here. Up to the chain. No, it's not giving me a good result there. Okay, let's try this area over the white. Same. Still not getting a good area. So maybe I'm trying too much. So I'm going back to smaller bits. There we go. Go back to smaller bits and do it in parts. Better. See that? So when I tried to do too much, I did not get a good result. Better. Okay. So it's not perfect. The line isn't lining up there. Okay. But I can work with it and blend it with the clone tool. So the erase tool is going to get me 80% of the way. And then the clone tool is going to take me the rest of the way. Okay. And this is a painstaking thing. So you really have to take your time and don't be impatient, right? So you're doing a little erase, then you're going to check it and you do a little bit more, right? So I'm not trying to do the whole thing in one swipe. No, didn't like that one. Right? You're not trying to do the whole thing in one swipe, and you want to make sure that you zoom in close. I'm not even going to attempt that. No, not even going to attempt that one. Okay, so I've got some here to finish, okay, and some here to finish, but from here over to there, it looks pretty good, right? Let's see what happens if I go across the chain. It's probably not going to give me a good result. Oh, we're getting some of it. I'm just trying to get rid of some of this thing and see if I can just blend it with the clone tool. No, again, making a mess. I'm just undoing. There. So I'm going to leave that. And I'm going to leave the garbage. So then I close the erase tool. The other benefit is once you close the erase tool, if you open it again, you can do a different iteration. So if you end up not liking it and undo the whole tool, you don't lose your first iteration of it. Now I'm going to do a clone tool. And when I start with cloning like this, I always lower my saturation. I'm going to go with about 50 strength. Okay. Sorry, not saturation. I lower my strength or opacity of the brush. right? With the clone brush, right, or this cloning tool, you get this crosshairs that looks like this. And this is where you set the source. Okay, so with a clone tool, there's a source and a target. So you're cloning from the source, where's my thing? From the source to the target. Okay, so when I click the first time, it's going to give me the source, right? And I want to make sure my brush is small. So I click here, right on the edge of the white, right? And then I'm going to clone exactly. I'm going to put my brush here. I'm actually going to get a new spot. To select a new spot, you can just hold your Alt Option key. So I want the edge of my brush just on the white. So you can set the softness. I always leave it high. In this case, I'm actually going to lower it because I want to get the edge of this thing accurate. Okay, so I put the brush so that it's exactly the same size, and I'm going to click right there. Okay, so Alt, click. Then when I move over, I'm literally just painting to the left. Okay, I'm going to go further over here. Okay, so I'm painting to the left. I'm also going to get a smaller brush. So I'm just painting this top one. Okay, so Alt, Option, painting along the top. And you notice that I'm doing it at 50%, right? And if I go above the line, it still paints straight line, okay? This one here, I'm going to come up from the bottom. So I'm constantly changing where I'm painting from, right? So I have my finger on the Alt Option key down below on my keyboard, and then I'm painting over to the side. Okay, so look at that. It's done a pretty good job there. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So get on the edge of the wall, right there. And then just paint down, right? So I'm doing it little by little. I'm at 50%. Notice I'm doing it there too. So just a little bit of green in there, right? Then I'm going to come line it up with the silver bar and paint up to the diagonal, right? And the same works going up the bar. So I'm just going to keep going up the bar. I can also come from this direction. Okay, so I'm trying to blend it so that it goes from this dark to light as well. Okay, so see how that's blending in? Like that. So don't be in a hurry. Whenever you're doing cloning, don't be in a hurry. It's a process, okay? You're not going to get it in one brush stroke, and that's why I do it at a lower opacity. You have to be careful when you go too low, though, and too many brush strokes. The area that you clone tends to start to look too smooth, okay? So now I'm going to do this area. I'm going to get on the line right there, and then just paint straight across. See that? Painted straight across, right across there. Look at that. I can even, oops, apparently I clicked. Do the same thing here. And I'm just going to go up to get that matching. So I'm coming from the bottom, I'm coming from the side, I'm coming from all different angles, right? You see what that's doing? Now I just have the one section here to finish. So I'm not going to complete this because it's taking a really long time, but that's the process that I use, okay? So I come from the bottom, I'm setting I can use a little bigger brush here. So I set my brush right at the edge, right? Hold Alt, Option, click, and then still against the edge. Now I can go straight up, okay? But you want to make sure you don't go too far, okay? And I'm going to just undo that paint. So you want to make sure you don't paint too far, because if you paint too far, I'm trying to undo. Oh, can't undo. If you paint too far, so for example, if I set my target here, I'm going to set my strength to 100, and I start painting here, right? Eventually, I'm going to get so that my target or my source is on the actual wire that I want to remove, and it's going to paint the wire up here. See that? So it's painting the wire up there. Okay, so that's not what we want. So you always want to source down lower and then just do small strokes. Don't go so far, okay? Don't go so far. So as soon as your target or your source starts to hit where you're cloning, you got to stop right there. See that? You got to stop. Okay, now I'm creating a line, so I'll come down and just keep blending it. But when you're at 50%, you're always blending, okay? Now I'm coming in from this side. Again, blending. Okay, now it's not blended very well because what happened? My softness is down. Okay, so I'm going to increase my softness, which is the soft edge of the brush, and then it's going to blend better. See that? Because I had a brush that was too hard edged. Okay, now going over this part could be tricky because I've got this chain here, right? But I'll show you how I'm going to handle that. So again, I'm constantly clicking over here with the Alt key to get a new source. Okay, I'm going from different angles because when you paint from one angle over, you risk getting that duplication. Okay, so let me show you how I'm going to do this chain. Okay, so I'm going to come all the way down here. I'm going to get a bigger brush. I'm going to go at 100%. I'm going to click right in the middle of this chain here. See that? Right? Now the lighter part of the outside there just needs to be blended in. Right? Just blend in that edge. And it's believable. Okay? Now if we do, I close the clone tool because if I want to go do the trash, I want a new iteration of it. Where is it? There we go. Okay, I want a new iteration so that if I make a mistake, I can just get rid of this version of the clone tool. So again, I'm going to go with 50%. And I'm going to start. See, there's also a pattern repeat here. So these two little dots here repeat there. So I got to fix that. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that pattern. Okay, then I'm going to go at the bottom here and just push it in. So I'm pushing the bottom of that step over and need to lower my softness because I want it to look like it's the edge. Okay, so I need the edge to be stronger. Okay, likewise here. So I'm going to start with the edge here and go down. Right, starting with the edge here, getting rid of that pattern. Right, because I don't want this pattern here. There's no pattern on this part of the square. But you see how much work this is, right? So to get rid of these things, I've used the erase tool. And then I've used the clone tool multiple times, right? Let's see how it's starting to feel like it, oops. Quick undo. Starting to feel like it's making sense here. And then when I get to the corner, I'm going to get a really small brush and just paint the corner. Now, if you want a straight line, right, remember you can do click there, hold the shift key and click there, and it will draw you a straight line. Okay. Let's do it one more time with a slightly bigger brush. Okay. Like that. So I could do the same here. Oops. Let's go there. Okay, so I want to click here, there, to there. Will draw me a nice straight line. Okay, there to there. See how that straightened that out at the bottom? Okay, and then use a smaller brush to get these little corners. Okay, because otherwise the corner is going to look too rounded. Okay, same thing here. Okay, so I would just keep going. go from here. Now I want soft again into this area. Okay, so I'm pushing it up, going down from here, going down from here, going over from here. Okay, this one might take a little bit more work because it's fully black. And you see how that's starting to blend. Okay, I want to get rid of that black. And I can even blend this edge right here. Just soften it. See that? Once again, if I want a nice clean edge, shift, click. Go from here, shift, click. Okay, let's have some questions. Can I zoom in more? I can't zoom in on the brush work, unfortunately, because when I zoom in more, it just zooms in on the image, right? So it doesn't make my brush any bigger, right? So I've kind of got a little bit blurry here, so I would just make sure I get a little more down here, right? It doesn't make my brush bigger when I zoom in, okay? And if I want it to be sharper, I can increase my strength. And I'm going to go from here. Okay, now I've also got a repeated pattern. See that? There's 2 dots, 2 dots, 2 dots. So I want to kind of get rid of those 2 dots. So you really have to make sure you don't get these repeated patterns, okay? Because if you've got 2 areas with the same dark spot, but they're far apart, that's going to give you away, right? So the key to cloning is to avoid those duplications, right? Make sure that you don't have stuff that looks exactly the same. There, that looks better. So I got my edge a little better over there. Right? So see how believable that is? I mean, we're looking at that at 400%. Look at the cord. I didn't finish all of it, but you get the idea. And the garbage. Gone. Okay? So the mistakes with the erase tool are not zooming in far enough, trying to paint too much out all at one time, right? And not doing little by little, okay? And close the tool and reopen it. Once you get a section that you're absolutely happy with, close the tool. That will save that version. Then open the tool again and continue, okay? Especially with the clone tool, because if you're happy with one version, you don't want to have to undo it all, because there is no sort of put back with the clone tool like there is with the erase tool, right? There is no, what's the word that it has on the tool? Restore, okay? There is no restore on the clone tool, okay? What I mean by a new iteration of the clone tool is use it more than once, okay? So see how I have one iteration here and one iteration here. So my first version of erase got me this far. My first version of clone got rid of most of the wire, and the second version of clone got rid of the garbage, okay? Yeah, we definitely need more coffee, but I've got one more thing I want to show you, and I know that John asked about black and white, so we're going to forge through, and then we're going to have some more coffee. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is elements in your image that are added, okay? So I'm going to just come to these guys here, okay? So I've added, you can see that the balloon, the colorful balloon, has been added to 4 different images. It was not in any of those images, and some things here have had elements added, okay? So I'm giving you the clue already that these were all added, okay? But can you tell me if there was any of the others, we'll just ignore that one at the bottom, are any of these other images with something added? Did I add the coffee cup? Did I add the steam? Did I add the steam here? Did I add the steam here? Did I add this balloon? Did I add anything here? Okay, if you've watched some of my other videos, you may already know the answers to these things because I've shown you how to do this. And if you have my Luminar course, I show how to do this so that it makes it real believable, okay? let me start with, let's just go in order. Let's start with the balloons. Okay. Did I add anything here? Okay. Obviously, you can see my layers on the left. Yes, I did. Okay. But this image here, right, was added. Okay. The balloon. But I want to show you again what to look for. Just like with skies, everything has to match. In the background image, right, we've got strong sunlight coming from the left, hitting the face of the mountain here. Strong shadows this way. Okay, this thing is in the sky. It should have light hitting it, but it's not. Okay, it was taken on a hazy, cloudy day. What else do you notice is a problem? Okay, first of all, the color is off, but also look at the level of green. Where's the shadow of the balloon? Exactly. Okay, so there's no shadow of the balloon on the ground or somewhere else, but look at the grain level. Okay, so the light quality and direction is wrong, and the grain level is wrong. So there's a lot of noise in this image, and there's none in the background image. Okay, so that is not working. So let me hide this one and put on this balloon. Okay, is this one better? You're right, we still don't have a shadow of the balloon somewhere on the ground, but is this one better? Does this one work? Okay, once again, I'm going to say we're close, but no cigar. Because where's the light coming from in this image? Okay, if we look at the balloon itself, where are the shadows? So if you have a hard time distinguishing light direction, look for the shadows. The shadows are on this side of the balloon, which would mean it's being lit from this way. But the mountain is being lit from this way. So we can go to this layer. Okay, so remember, you can't do this with the crop tool. If you try and do this with the crop tool and flip things, it flips everything. Okay, you have to do it with the layer properties. So make sure you're on the layer that you want to flip, and there's a flip here. Okay, now the light is coming from the right direction, and we just put the balloon back in the sky. So that is far more believable. Okay, but Steve is right. Stephen is right. There's no shadow of this balloon. So slightly believable, but still something that's a giveaway. Okay. What about this one? Right. Once again, close, but no cigar. Where's the light coming from in the original image? Again, if you're not sure, look at the trees. The right side of the tree is highlighted. The left side is in shadow. Okay. Oops, shadow's over here. So once again, our tree, our balloon, needs to be flipped. Okay. So if we flip it, now it's far more believable. Oh, because the light is over here. However, the shadows are a lot deeper on the balloon than they are on the background. Okay. So we either need to soften the shadows on the balloon or punch up the background image. Okay, so again, they have to match. And there's no strong sunlight coming through on the background image. So again, close but no cigar. Here we are again, okay? Close but no cigar once more. Here we actually see the sun. And of course, it's here, so this part of the balloon would be lit, and it's not. So once again, we can flip it. Okay, so now it's lighting that part of the balloon, but it's also from the wrong direction because the sun is down here and the bottom of the basket would be lit. Okay, your shadows would be up here on the top of the balloon. So once again, close, but no cigar. Also, the colors don't quite match. I'm going to do the last two balloon ones. Okay, what about this one? Once again, actually, this one's not even close. Okay, this one is not even close, doesn't match. Okay, the background image, I'll come back to that in a second, Stephen. The background image is very soft light. This is all in the shade. Okay, the balloon is in bright sun. Okay, also, it's got hard, strong light coming from that direction. Okay. The other thing that doesn't match is we're looking down onto the boat and the lake. So how would we be seeing the balloon? We would see more of the top of the balloon than straight on or the bottom. We wouldn't see the bottom of the basket if we were looking down like that. Okay, so we're up in a high viewpoint looking down. We wouldn't see that part of the balloon. So your perspective also has to work, which is why I did that. Okay, once again, we're looking down onto the road. This might have been taken with a drone, this background image, right? Without the balloon, we're looking down onto the scene, okay? Then how on earth are we seeing the bottom underside of this balloon? Okay, not possible. Also, it's way too big and it doesn't make sense. Also, the lighting is wrong. It's coming from this direction on the balloon and the sun is in the background behind the balloon. So nothing about this one matches. Okay. Let's take a look at the coffee cups. I've got 3 coffee cups. Okay. This one, this one, and this one. Did I do anything to any of these? Right? If you're paying attention, you might have noticed whether or not there was edits indicated. Okay? You can tell there's edits done to an image by this little icon here in the bottom in Luminar Neo. Where's my, there, this little icon here. Okay? So that one is edited. That one is edited. This one is not. Okay? So that's your giveaway. Okay, so this one has no edits. This is the original image. The steam was there. This one is not. When we look at the edits, I use the steam from that same other image. Okay, so if I change the blend mode on this one to normal, you can see the full dark version. Okay, if I unmask it, you'll also see it. So if I clear the mask or fill it, there's the coffee cup. Okay, so that's the image that I used. And what I did was I masked it so it was only from here up. And then I changed the blend mode to screen. Okay, so what happens is then it's only showing the steam, not the black. Okay. Lighten would have worked as well. So either of these, but steam had more of the actual steam showing up. Right? Now there's again a slight mismatch because now the smoke or the steam is, oops, I moved the whole layer. Didn't mean to do that. The smoke or the steam has grain and the background doesn't. Okay? That's an easy enough fix though. Let's go to the background image and just, where are we? Give it some film grain. Okay. So if I'm adding some film grain to the background, now it matches a little better. Okay. Something like that. Okay. Now the overall image has grain. What about this one? Okay. This one indicated edits. Once again, I have added some smoke or steam. So there's a little bit of steam there, but I wanted some more. Okay. So I put it in. Notice the other steam was a lot more out of focus. Okay. So I could blur this one a little bit more. I can also brighten it. Okay. So I put it in. That's the whole image. Right. I also masked it. Okay. So masking it was to kind of feather off this part here so it matched into the cup better. Okay. And I let it sit, I let it be at normal blend mode, but I could change it to lighten or screen as well. Okay. These are the ones that tend to show lightness, and then dial in how bright I want it. Okay. Like so. Now, if I decide my steam is too sharp, we can just blur it a little bit. I do find it a little sharp. That's too blurry. There we go. Okay, so that makes it a little bit more believable that it's swirly and soft. Okay, I think I moved my steam as well. There we go. Okay, something like that. Now, I'm going to come back to the catalog because I want you to look at this one and see if I did anything here. Okay, did you look at whether or not it was edited? What do you think? It's a nice campfire scene, right? Oops. I added 3 elements here. I added the moon, right? The smoke over the fire and the fire. And because they were all fairly believable, right? Oops, it works. Now, if I want to blend them all together again to make them look more realistic, merge layers, and then I can apply a lot. Or maybe in this case, I had the idea of doing like a faded out black. So I want like a matte black look. There's our new layer. Right. So I had the idea of just doing matte. And you can do this with curves as well. So I'm just creating a matte black. Soften the vividness. Okay. So see how that's just giving it a little blend. Just ever so slightly. Okay. I could add some grain as well if I want to make it look like foam grain. Okay. So when you're adding your elements, all the things that we talked about for sky replacement and background replacement, everything always applies. These are the same principles. Okay. So I'm just going to come back to here. Okay, so the principles apply the same. Okay, so you want to make sure that your lighting direction matches, that the color of the images that are being combined match and work well together. The graininess, okay, if one is grainy and one is not, you can fix that by adding grain to the one that it doesn't have grain, or trying to do some denoise on the one that does. I find that adding grain tends to work better. It's easier, and I don't mind a little bit of grain myself. Okay. And they have to be perspective and scale appropriate. Okay. If I put a giant moon in here or a giant raging fire, that's also not going to make sense. Right. So everything has to be proportionate and make sense. Okay. Now, I know that somebody asked about black and white. I don't know if John is still here or not. I can do a quick black and white. In terms of adding the shadow, Stephen, it's really difficult. You have to, honestly, it's not even something I do because I don't add elements to my images like this, honestly. But you'd have to kind of either use dodge and burn, or what I might do is create a duplicate layer and then sort of make a dodge and burn. So I'll do a duplicate layer. And then I'll just do a little bit of dodge and burn. I'm going to darken, okay? And the sun is here, right? So, I mean, is the shadow going to be here? You know, like how do you make a balloon shadow? The guys that do a lot of Photoshop stuff like this would do this in Photoshop, right? So you would create, you would actually duplicate the balloon layer and resize it and shrink it and do some weird stuff. I'll just do that. So I'll duplicate the balloon layer, and then they would like do this and like put it down here on the ground and like something like, you know, do some weird stuff like this. It's going to be really skinny, or maybe the balloon is going to reflect over on there, right? And then you have to go in and make it a shadow. So you literally just sort of, you know, make it black. And then, of course, we need to blur it, right? It's too sharp, right? It's too sharp. Yeah, and I don't know if it's going to blur effectively because of the mask. We'd have to go blur the mask a bit more. So I don't know if that's going to work so good. And then probably a better blend mode, right? So maybe darken. Right. It's definitely too blurry, and the only way we can get the edge to be blurred is to come in here and mask it. So I can do... let's do erase. So tricky. You got me challenged on this one. Let's just see if I can erase some of the edge to blur it. No, that's not. That is not a good job. No. Maybe if I just go on the edge like this. I just want to like touch the edge. It's really tricky. Yeah, it's going to be really tricky. Because we just need to soften the edge. And because it's got a mask on it, it's super tricky. Yeah, this is easier to do in Photoshop for sure. Because your shadow wouldn't be this sharp, right? But this is the general idea of how you would go about doing it. Okay? Does that help? Yeah, I could lower the opacity as well. Oh, I have a cup. Apparently my coffee is here. I could lower the opacity as well. But it's not going to soften it. Thank you. My coffee is here. We're kind of going epic today. And I know that John asked about a black and white. Let me just see if I can just do a quick black and white something here. Okay, let's do this one. So the biggest black and white mistakes that people make, I'm going to undo that sky replacement, to be honest, and undo a couple of things here. The biggest mistake people make with black and white is to not use the black and white conversion tools that are in your photo editing software. Okay, in Lightroom, there's literally a button to click to get a black and white profile. Right, so Adobe black and white profile is the one you want to use, or the adaptive black and white profile. Right, I'm still just waiting for this to catch up. Steven says, yeah, I know it can be done in Photoshop. It's harder in Luminar for some things like that, because I could blur the mask easier in Photoshop. I can literally blur the mask. Ooh, I can blur the mask in Luminar. Actually, where's our balloon? I can blur the mask. Now I want to know if we can do it. I can blur the mask. I forgot we've got a shift edge and soften edge on the masking now. I forgot. Bye, Dawn. Go into masking, actions. Look at that, feather mask. There we go. I totally forgot about that. Look at that. There's our balloon, and it's the feather edge on the feather mask. There we go. Totally forgot about that. Way better. Okay, let me go back to here. Thanks, Dawn. I'm glad you enjoyed it and got lots of tips. Tell other people about the stream, that I do this every 2 weeks. I'll be back again 2 weeks from today, but 4 hours later. I haven't chosen the topic yet. Since this one is more Luminar oriented, I may do the same one for Lightroom and Photoshop, right? Doing mistakes in Lightroom and Photoshop, right? But like I said, these all apply in any software, regardless of what you're using. Okay, so the biggest mistake for black and white conversion is just doing a desaturate, okay, as opposed to using the raw, using the black and white conversion. Okay, so don't desaturate. Okay. The other thing is, if you're doing a black and white conversion, make sure your image has lots of contrast in color before you convert to black and white. Okay, so when you do the conversion, okay, it still looks flat, but we have more options here. We can darken the sky, okay? We can brighten the yellows. We can brighten the reds. I can brighten the greens. This chair looks like it's got some magenta in it. Okay, so we're already picking up lots more contrast, okay? So use these tools here, okay? But if I wanted to, for example, I'm just going to remove this for a second. If I wanted to have more definition between some of these tones, I would go and do that with the color tool first. or use that color harmony one, which is what I just removed. But for example, I'll use luminance to brighten the greens a bit here. And if they go a little bit neon, I'm okay with that. Okay, I'm going to brighten the reds because I want the chair brighter. And I'm going to darken the blues. Okay, like so. Let's see what magenta. Oh, that's that chair. Okay, good. Then when I go to black and white, it's already shifted my tones a little bit. So it gives me more, if you go over the top with your color, you actually get more to work with here as well. Okay. So in this case, yeah, I want to brighten the greens and then darken the blues. Right. I could also darken the greens. Go the other way. Okay. So biggest mistake with black and white is not using the black and white conversion tool. Number one. I think we're about at the end of what I wanted to cover today. So I hope you got lots of value out of this. We talked about overprocessing. Please don't make vignettes that look like that. Please don't make neon people. Please don't make crunchy, oversaturated, oversharpened things, right? Don't make neon puke. Don't put in the wrong sky. Don't put in the wrong background. Take your time on erasing and cloning. The biggest mistake I see there is rushing and trying to do things with one brush stroke. Okay. Take your time when matching elements to add them to other images. Make sure that they light direction and quality of light match, the level of graininess, the color, and the perspective and proportion. Okay. So I hope that helps you. I'm going to come back in here. I hope that helps you avoid some of those mistakes. Actually, where's my list? There we go. I hope that helps you avoid some of those mistakes that we covered today. And we added the extra one, a little bit about black and white at the end there. If you want to know more about black and white conversion, there's other videos on our channel just on black and white, including entire live streams. I will be back again in 2 weeks from today, 4 hours later. So we're here on the first Sunday of the month. This is Sunday, and the third Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. Sorry, first Sunday of the month, 2 p.m. Eastern. Third Sunday of the month, 6 p.m. Eastern. There you go. But you can always check YouTube Live, our live on youtube.com/digitalphotomentor/live, and it will show you what's coming up, what's scheduled, what's the topic. And if there isn't one scheduled, they will also show you all of our past lives, which you can find on the channel as well. So there's tons of great information for you there, as well as on our website. And if you've enjoyed this entire presentation today, a lot of what I taught in this lesson is also part of my Luminar Neo course. So if you want even further Luminar Neo learning, apparently I do need more coffee because my lips don't work anymore. My tongue doesn't work anymore. And it's time to pack because I'm off to Calgary tomorrow for a photography conference. So check out my Luminar Neo course if you want more learning on that topic. So until next time, I'm going to come back on here. Until next time, give this video a thumbs up, share it with as many people as possible, and I will see you soon. Take care.